Hello everyone, I am Savannah Kepley and I am an 8th grade language arts teacher, and I am here to share with you my 4 basic expectations for grammar in my middle school classroom. Now we do have big things that we go over, like dangling modifiers and subject-verb agreement and all that important stuff. But I do have 4 basic grammar rules that I want to make sure that my students are always following when they turn in an assignment. Now, I'm sure you have noticed that grammar and written language is changing, especially in this digital age. This past school year, when I was reading every one of my students' assignments, she was like, "How was it?" And I said, "This is great, but what we need to make sure that we're doing is putting periods at the end of every sentence." And she's like, "Why would I do that? I'm not mad." And I was like, "I understand that, but in language arts classrooms or any formal setting like school, you're going to have to put ending punctuation. It doesn't have the same meaning as what it does when you text. And that's a little something called code switching. So how we act in one environment is how it's different than how we act in another environment." So I was like, at a funeral, you behave differently than how you would at the homecoming game. And kind of in the same vein, how we text and communicate via text message is different than how we communicate in the language arts classroom. So it's like, in this classroom, it doesn't mean you're angry. It means you're a grammar rock star. She was like, whatever. She put her period. So from that moment, I was like, I need to have some basic expectations for my students, and I need to intentionally go over those with them so they know what I expect out of everything that they turned in. So here are my 4 basic expectations. The first expectation is something they have been doing since kindergarten, but surprisingly, my students at least, do not consistently do this when they complete their assignments. So my first expectation is that capitalization is important. And so you will always capitalize proper nouns, the first letter of the first word of every sentence, the pronoun I. Why is that so hard? I don't know. Maybe it's the texting world. It changes it for you sometimes. I don't even know if it does that anymore. So if I had $1 for every time I had to write, "Please capitalize the pronoun I" or the first word of every sentence, I would be living beachfront in Malibu with a personal chef. Are you with me? I know you probably are. So that's why this is my expectation, because I'm tired of writing it, so I need to explicitly teach it that is what I expect. In addition, they need to capitalize months, days, and holidays. You would think students would know this by middle school, and I think they do know it. The problem is not consistently enforced or expected. So if I go over at the very beginning of school, this is what I expect, and then I consistently enforce that throughout the year, they will start turning in assignments that have capitalization where it needs to be. My second expectation I kind of alluded to at the beginning of the video, and that is that ending punctuation is important. It doesn't mean you're angry if you put a period, and it's required in my classroom. Otherwise, you have one long run-on sentence, and it's very hard to read. So I encourage students to separate their thoughts in order to avoid those run-on sentences that are very hard to read. And so they need to place the punctuation at the end of the sentence. Sounds, again, very basic. That's why it's called basic grammar expectations. But we do need to go over these at the very beginning of the year so they know your expectations. All right, third expectation is that commas have a purpose. Now, I love my commas. I use them in my text messages to the horror of all of my students. "I can't believe you do that, Miss Kepley." I know, I put commas where they need to go in text messages. But we have 1 or 2 types of students. One student just randomly puts commas places, and then another student just never uses commas at all. And I think commas are important, and they do have a purpose. And so that is one of my expectations, is that commas will be used appropriately in class. Now, I have found with this expectation that I do have to do a little bit more in-depth teaching with it, and I have a mini lesson that I use for that, and I'll link it below. But for this one, my basic comma expectations is that they use a comma before a coordinating conjunction when joining two independent clauses, and sometimes when I lay that first one out, they're like, what does that even mean? What are all those words? And if I start to see that look on their faces, I'm like, okay, we need to visit that mini lesson on commas. Second part of the commas have a purpose is that they'll use a comma after a dependent clause that starts a sentence. Commas will separate a list of items in a series, and I'm big on that Oxford comma as well. And they use commas after an introductory adverb. So that's my basic comma expectations for the classroom. I don't know why random commas drive me crazy. So I make sure that they know I have a comma expectation. Finally, the fourth one, you have probably seen this in your students' writing, but my expectation in class is that they longhand everything. So what that means in my world is that the abbreviations and acronyms and symbols that you use in text messages, while they're great and purposeful in text messages, are not something that you use when you're responding to a written assignment or when you're doing a written assignment in language arts class. First, you'll use proper language instead of slang. So instead of saying, yo, bruh, which I hear all the time, you're going to address someone like Miss Kepley, comma, instead of yo, bruh. You will use full words instead of abbreviations or acronyms. So instead of saying IRL, you would write in real life. So BC for because, I see that one a lot. The number 4 for the word for. You are for your. So these are just common ones that I see in the classroom when they're writing. And so I'm like, no, we're not doing that in this classroom. You're actually going to longhand it and use the full words. Third part of this is that you'll use the actual word instead of the symbol. So the and symbol is one that's used a lot, and that one drives me crazy. So I'm like, y'all just spell it out. Don't write the little symbol, just spell out the word and. And then finally, avoid common texting acronyms. So OMG, like that kind of stuff. They put that in their writing. I get it. They're used to doing it in their texting world, and they're texting all of the time. So I get why they feel so comfortable doing it. But we have to teach students there's a time and place for this type of language. So the language they use in text messaging, it's great. It's just not the expectation that I have in my classroom. So those are my 4 basic grammar expectations for the middle school classroom. If you're like, yes, I love this, I do have a mini lesson that goes with it. It's called Common Grammar Mistakes. And so it goes through these common grammar mistakes, and it has some practices, and it has a quiz that goes with it as well. This slide deck that I used here is part of ELA Unlimited. It's an ELA Unlimited exclusive resource. So if you are a member of ELA Unlimited, you can go download it there. If you're not, if you're like, what is this ELA Unlimited that you speak of? It's just a resource hub for language arts teachers where you can download creative and engaging standards-based lessons when you need them and however you need them. So you just go search for what you need, click download, and it's ready for you. I also have a little freebie for you. It's a reference guide that I use as a study guide, so you can download that. It's a printable, so you can go and give that to your students as well. And that is it. That is my 4, like I said, basic expectations for my middle school classroom. Make sure you check out the links below, and until next time, bye.